Hi everyone. Tonight we walk into a world locked in ice, where the air itself seems to hold its breath and every exhale turns to fog before your eyes. You stand at the mouth of a high valley, snow falling in slow, deliberate flakes that settle onto your shoulders like a quiet weight, and somewhere far below, wind moves through bare branches with a sound like a long, low sigh. You probably will not make it through a night like this. Not unless you understand how the earliest humans found a way to survive winters that seem to stretch on forever. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you're truly enjoying the journey. And if you'd like, let me know where you're watching from tonight and what time it is where you are. Now lower the lights and let your mind drift into the cold and the quiet. You step forward into snow that reaches past your ankles, each footfall sinking with a soft, muffled crunch that disappears almost as soon as it happens. The world around you is impossibly still. Not silent exactly, there's a faint hiss as snowflakes touch the ground, and somewhere in the distance, a branch groans under its own frozen weight, but still in the way that only deep winter can be. Your breath comes out in slow clouds, dissolving into the gray sky above. Your hands are tucked beneath thick folds of hide, fingers curled tightly, and even so the cold finds its way in, nibbling at your knuckles. Behind you, your group moves in a loose line, each person watching their footing carefully. No one speaks much. Cold has a way of making words feel expensive, like something better saved for when it's truly needed. A raised hand means stop. A tilt of the head means listen. The mountain teaches its own language, and tonight everyone is fluent in it. A grounded historical fact settles into your thoughts as you walk. Archaeologists studying Ice Age sites across Europe and Asia have found that early human groups in cold climates often numbered between 15 and 30 individuals, small enough to move quickly when the weather turned, but large enough to share the labor of hunting, fire tending, and watching through the long nights. You understand, standing here with snow gathering on your eyelashes, exactly why that number mattered. Too few and the cold wins. Too many and there isn't enough warmth to go around. A quieter, more curious detail comes to you next. Some researchers studying ancient tools found faint traces suggesting that certain cold climate groups rubbed rendered animal fat into their hide clothing. Hopping the grease would help shed snow and block wind. You imagine smearing your own coat with something like that right now, wondering if it would actually help, or if you'd simply spend the rest of the night smelling like a campfire that had gone terribly wrong. It's a small, almost playful thought, but it gives this freezing night a strange flicker of warmth. You continue along a ridge where the snow has drifted into long, smooth waves, shaped by wind into shallow dunes of white. Your boots, simple wrappings of hide bound tightly with sinew, sink unevenly with each step. Somewhere ahead, the person leading the group raises a fist. Everyone halts. A faint crack echoes from somewhere below, ice settling, or maybe a branch finally giving way under the weight of snow. You wait. Nothing follows. The group moves on. Historians still debate where early humans in mountainous, snow-heavy regions preferred to rest during the coldest stretches of winter. Some argue that exposed ridgelines, despite the wind, offered the advantage of visibility. You could see danger coming from any direction. Others insist that low, sheltered hollows mattered more, since wind alone could kill faster than almost anything else in weather like this. You glance toward the ridge above, pale and exposed under the heavy sky. Then you glance toward the tree line below, dark and inviting, but harder to watch. Both choices carry their own kind of risk, and for a moment you feel the weight of every decision your ancestors must have carried on nights exactly like this one. The cold deepens as the light fades further. You shift the bundle on your back, strips of dried meat wrapped in hide, and a tightly bound nest of dry tinder you've been protecting since before the snow began. Without fire tonight, nothing else will matter. Not the food, not the shelter, not the distance you've traveled. Fire is the difference between rest and something far worse. Your fingers brush against a low branch, stiff with frost, and a small shower of snow falls onto your sleeve. You watch it melt slowly into the fibers of your coat, droplets gathering before freezing again almost as quickly as they formed. The mountain has its own slow rhythm tonight, snow falling, wind pausing, then rising again, like breath moving in and out of some enormous, sleeping creature. Ahead, the trail narrows between two looming boulders, snow built up against their bases in soft white drifts. You guide the group through single file, stepping carefully over a frozen stream that cuts across the path, its surface gleaming faintly under the dim light. The ice creaks once beneath someone's foot, and everyone freezes for a heartbeat before continuing. Frozen water can be a path or a trap, and the difference is not always obvious until it's too late. Soon the trail opens into a shallow basin shielded on three sides by stone, snow falling more gently here, filtered through the branches of old, twisted pines above. You crouch and press your palm into the ground. Firm, dry beneath the thin layer of snow. A good sign. You gesture for the others to follow, and quietly, people begin clearing space, stacking gathered branches, brushing snow from flat stones that might serve as seats close to a future fire. For a moment you simply stand still, letting your breathing settle. The wind here is softer, blocked by stone on either side. It's not warmth, not yet, but it is shelter, and on a night like this, that distinction means everything. Someone unpacks a small bundle of dry moss and bark shavings, protected for days against exactly this moment. Someone else begins arranging stones into a rough circle, a hearth shaped by hands moving on instinct alone. A quiet hope spreads through the group, fragile but real. Tonight you might have warmth. Tonight you might actually sleep. You sit at the edge of the clearing, knees pulled to your chest, listening to the soft scrape of stone against stone as the fire pit takes shape. Above you, snow continues to drift down in slow, weightless spirals, catching faint light before settling onto the dark branches overhead. Your thoughts drift toward all the winters that came before this one. All the nights early humans must have spent exactly like this, cold and uncertain, but moving forward anyway, one careful step at a time. You close your eyes for just a moment, letting the hush of falling snow settle over your shoulders like a blanket made of silence. The fire takes longer to catch than anyone would like. You kneel beside the small pit of stones, cupping a bundle of dry moss between your palms, breathing warmth into your hands before transferring that small heat into the tinder itself. Someone strikes flint against a shard of pyrite, sparks leaping in tiny, bright arcs that vanish almost as soon as they appear. On the fourth strike, one spark catches. A thread of smoke rises, thin and hesitant, curling upward into the cold air. You lean closer, careful not to breathe too hard, and blow the gentlest stream of air you can manage. The ember brightens. A tiny flame stutters to life, no larger than a fingertip, trembling against the dark. You feed it the smallest twigs first, watching closely, knowing that too much fuel too soon can smother a fire before it has the strength to survive on its own. The flame steadies, grows, climbs into something with real shape, and the warmth, even this small amount, feels like the first real comfort of the entire night. A grounded historical fact rises in your mind as you watch the fire take hold. Excavations at several Ice Age campsites have revealed hearths reused again and again across many seasons, sometimes built directly into shallow pits lined with stone to hold heat longer and shield the flame from wind. The design you've shaped tonight, almost without thinking, echoes something practiced for tens of thousands of years. You feel a strange thread of connection stretching backward through time, as if your hands are simply repeating a motion countless others have made before you. The group gathers close, hands extended toward the modest but growing fire. Snow continues to drift down beyond the stone walls of your shelter, but here, in this small pocket carved out of the mountain's cold, the flames begin to push the worst of winter back, just slightly, just enough. A curious detail drifts into your thoughts next. Some researchers studying cold climate archaeological sites have proposed that certain groups deliberately positioned fires near rock walls, allowing the stone to absorb heat during the day and slowly release it back through the night, a kind of natural, accidental radiator. Whether early humans understood this consciously or stumbled upon it through repeated experience remains uncertain. But sitting here now, your back nearly touching cold stone that already feels faintly less cold than before. The idea feels entirely believable. You add a slightly thicker branch to the fire, watching the bark catch and curl. The flames rise a little higher, casting flickering light against the stone walls around you, painting shifting amber shapes across rough, frost-covered surfaces. For a moment, the cold feels almost bearable. For a moment, the mountain feels less like an enemy and more like something you might just barely learn to live inside of. Someone begins unrolling thick hides near the fire, laying them flat against the snow-dusted ground to create a barrier between warm bodies and frozen earth. You help smooth the edges, tucking loose corners beneath stones to keep the wind from sneaking underneath. It isn't soft. It isn't truly warm, but it is dry, and tonight, dry might be the most precious thing of all. As the shelter takes its final shape, a widely discussed insight from cold climate archaeology surfaces in your mind. Many researchers believe that early humans surviving harsh winters relied heavily on layering, not just thick coats, but multiple thinner layers of hide and fur, trapping pockets of warm air between them. A single heavy layer might block wind, but several thinner ones worn together could hold heat far more effectively. You glance down at your own clothing, layered without much thought, shaped more by necessity than by any grand plan, and wonder how many small lessons like this were learned the hard way, one freezing night at a time. The fire crackles steadily now, strong enough to hold its own against the cold creeping in from the edges of the clearing. You sit back, letting your shoulders ease for the first time since the snow began falling in earnest. Across the fire, a child leans heavily against an older sibling, eyes already drifting shut despite the cold air, lulled by warmth and the low murmur of quiet voices. You watch the flames for a while, mesmerized by the way they bend and stretch, throwing brief shapes against the falling snow beyond the firelight's reach. Somewhere above, wind moves through unseen branches, a long, low whisper that rises and falls like breathing. The mountain feels vast tonight, ancient and indifferent, but inside this small ring of warmth, something fragile and human pushes back against all that vastness, one ember at a time. A quiet thought lingers as you watch the fire settle into a steady glow. Historians still debate how cold climate groups decided when a shelter location was good enough versus when it was worth moving on. Some argue that early humans were remarkably tolerant of imperfect conditions, prioritizing speed and immediate safety. Others believe that experienced groups developed sharp, almost instinctive judgment about subtle signs, wind patterns, snow accumulation, the structural soundness of overhanging rock, that could mean the difference between a restful night and a dangerous one. Sitting here, in a shelter that feels solid but not flawless, you understand both arguments equally well. You glance upward through a gap in the stone walls. Snow continues to fall, but more gently now, drifting rather than driving, each flake visible for a moment in the dim firelight before disappearing into darkness. The wind has softened too, no longer pushing hard against the rock, but moving instead in slow, almost gentle gusts. For the first time tonight, you allow yourself to imagine sleep. Not deep, untroubled sleep. That feels like too much to hope for in weather like this, but something close to rest. Something that might let your body recover enough strength for tomorrow. You shift closer to the fire, feeling its warmth seep slowly into your face and hands. Beside you, someone passes around a small portion of dried meat, tough but flavorful, chewed slowly to make it last. The simple act of eating, even something so modest, feels like another small victory against the cold pressing in just beyond the firelight. As you eat, your mind wanders to all the winters that must have come before this one, stretching back further than memory or story could ever fully capture. Each one survived through small, careful choices like the ones your group has made tonight. Each one a quiet testament to the stubborn persistence of people determined to see the next morning, no matter how deep the snow, no matter how long the night. You finish the last of your portion and lean back slightly, letting your weight settle against the hide-covered ground. The fire crackles. Snow falls softly beyond the stone walls. For now, in this small, hard-won pocket of warmth, the mountain's relentless cold feels, just barely, like something you can survive. You drift into a shallow, uneven sleep, the kind that never fully lets go of awareness. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remain tuned to the fire's crackle, to the soft hiss of snow settling against stone, to the rhythm of breathing all around you. Time passes strangely in weather like this. Minutes stretch long. Hours collapse into something blurred and half-remembered. When you finally stir fully awake, the fire has burned down to a bed of deep orange coals, pulsing faintly beneath a thin layer of ash. The cold has crept in closer while you slept, settling into the spaces the fire's heat no longer reaches. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the others curled nearby, and feel the sharp bite of night air against your cheeks the moment you move beyond the immediate warmth of the coals. Something has changed in the stillness. You're not sure what exactly, only that your body has registered it before your mind has caught up. You stay motionless for a moment, listening. The wind has shifted. Instead of the long, steady sigh from earlier, it now comes in short, sharp gusts, rattling brittle branches somewhere above the shelter's stone walls. Snow that had been falling gently begins to pick up again, the flakes smaller now, driven sideways rather than drifting straight down. A storm building strength, the way mountain storms sometimes do in the deepest hours of night, catching travelers off guard precisely when they feel safest. You rise carefully, wrapping your hide cloak tighter around your shoulders, and step toward the narrow gap in the stone wall that serves as your shelter's entrance. Beyond it, the world has transformed. What was a quiet, snow-dusted clearing now churns with white, wind-driven flakes that blur every shape beyond a few paces. You can just make out the dark shadows of trees swaying at the clearing's edge, their branches bending under increasing pressure. A grounded historical fact settles into your thoughts as you watch the storm intensify. Climate records reconstructed from ice cores and sediment layers suggest that many regions inhabited by early humans during glacial periods experienced sudden, severe storm systems. Bursts of intense wind and snowfall that could arrive with little warning, even during periods that otherwise felt relatively calm. Survival in these climates required constant readiness, an awareness that calm moments were temporary gifts, not guarantees. You glance back at the fire. It needs feeding, and soon, or this sudden surge of wind will finish what the cold alone could not. You step quietly toward the small stack of gathered branches, selecting two of the driest pieces, and crouch beside the coals. The first branch catches slowly, reluctant in the colder air, but persistent breath and patience coax a steady flame back to life. Relief settles into your chest as warmth begins climbing again, pushing back gently against the increasingly hostile night. A companion stirs beside the fire, blinking awake at the sound of wind now howling more insistently beyond the stone walls. Their eyes find yours, silently asking the question that doesn't need words, is this bad? You shake your head slightly, though you're not entirely certain yourself. The shelter has held this long. The walls are thick stone, weathered by centuries, indifferent to a single night's fury. You have to trust that indifference now. Trust that the same stone that has stood through countless winters before yours will stand through this one too. A curious detail rises in your mind as the wind shrieks faintly through some unseen gap above. Some researchers studying prehistoric shelter sites have noted small piles of stones and packed snow near shelter entrances, possibly used to reduce wind exposure during sudden storms. Whether these barriers were built in advance or constructed hastily in moments exactly like this one remains uncertain, but the logic feels obvious now. Sitting here with cold air slipping steadily through the narrow gap you call a doorway. You glance toward a loose pile of snow near the entrance and begin pushing it, handful by handful, into the gap, packing it firmly against the stone. It's crude, hurried work, but within a few minutes, the worst of the wind's bite eases noticeably. The fire's flame steadies, no longer flickering wildly with each gust. Outside, the storm continues to build. You can hear it more than see it now, a deep, rolling roar moving through the trees, snapping a branch somewhere in the distance with a sharp, sudden crack that makes everyone in the shelter go still for a heartbeat. No one speaks. Listening is its own kind of language tonight, and everyone understands the dialect of fear and caution without needing to share a single word. Historians and archaeologists still discuss how cold climate communities manage the psychological weight of nights like this, nights where survival depended entirely on shelter integrity and the whims of weather beyond anyone's control. Some scholars argue that communal proximity itself, the simple physical closeness of huddled bodies, served as much an emotional anchor as a literal source of warmth. Fear shared among many feels different than fear carried alone. You feel that truth now, glancing around at the tired, watchful faces lit faintly by firelight. No one here is panicking. Everyone seems instead to lean subtly closer together, drawing reassurance from each other's presence as much as from the fire itself. You add another branch to the flames, watching sparks rise and scatter against the dark stone ceiling above. The storm rages on beyond your fragile barrier of stacked snow and ancient rock, but inside, warmth persists, fragile but stubborn, refusing to surrender to the night's fury. Eventually, the wind begins to ease, its violent gusts softening gradually into something more familiar, a low, steady moan rather than a furious howl. Snowfall slows from a blinding swirl into gentler, more measured flakes. You feel your shoulders loosen slightly, the tension that had gathered there easing as the immediate danger passes. A companion beside you exhales a long breath, the tension in their face softening as well. "It's passing," they murmur quietly, more to themselves than to you. You nod, watching the fires glow steady into something calmer, more reliable. The shelter holds. The ancient stone, weathered by countless winters before this one, has done exactly what it was always going to do, stand firm against wind and cold alike, indifferent to the small, fragile lives sheltering within its walls tonight. You feel a quiet gratitude toward that indifference, toward the simple, unthinking solidity of rock that has outlasted storms far worse than this one. You settle back against the hide-covered ground, letting your breathing slow to match the fire's gentle crackle. Outside, snow continues to fall, softer now, almost peaceful in its rhythm. The mountain's fury has passed, at least for tonight, and what remains is something close to calm, hard-won, fragile but real. Your eyes grow heavy again. Sleep, when it finally comes, arrives more deeply this time, settling over you like the snow settling over the mountain itself, quiet, patient, and absolute. You wake to a pale, colorless light filtering faintly through the gap in the stone wall. Morning has arrived, though it hardly looks different from the deep gray of night. Winter mornings in the mountains rarely announce themselves with color. The fire has burned down to a small bed of embers, and the air inside the shelter carries a deep chill that settles into your bones the moment you sit up. You stretch carefully, feeling stiffness in your shoulders from the cold ground beneath the hides. Around you, the others begin to stir slowly, breath visible in faint clouds even in the dim shelter. No one moves quickly. Cold mornings demand patience, a slow gathering of warmth and will before the body is ready to face the world beyond the fire's reach. You crawl toward the entrance, pushing aside the packed snow barrier from the night before and step out into the clearing. The storm has left its mark everywhere. Snow lies in deep, smooth drifts, erasing the paths you walked the day before, reshaping the entire landscape into something unfamiliar and pristine. The trees stand heavy with fresh white weight, their branches bowed low, some nearly touching the ground. The silence out here is profound. Not the tense, listening silence of last night's storm, but something gentler, the hush that follows when nature has finished speaking and simply rests. You take a slow breath, the cold air sharp in your lungs, carrying the clean, mineral scent that only follows fresh snowfall. A grounded historical fact drifts into your thoughts as you survey the transformed landscape. Researchers studying ancient cold climate sites have found that early human groups often relied heavily on reading subtle changes in snow texture and depth to judge safe travel routes. Since fresh, unpacked snow could hide dangerous footing, fallen branches, hidden rocks, even unstable ground near streams. Standing here now, looking at the deceptively smooth white blanket covering everything, you understand the wisdom in that caution immediately. You take a few careful steps forward, testing the snow's depth with each footfall before committing your full weight. It comes up nearly to your knees in places, slowing your movement considerably. Behind you, others emerge from the shelter one by one, blinking against the pale light, exhaling slow clouds of breath that drift upward and disappear. A curious detail comes to mind as you watch the snow settle and shift subtly under the weak morning light. Some researchers have proposed that certain prehistoric groups developed simple snowshoe-like devices, flat pieces of bark, or woven branches strapped to the feet, to distribute weight more evenly across deep snow. Whether this practice was widespread or limited to a few resourceful groups remains uncertain, but the idea feels deeply practical as you struggle through drift after drift, your legs already beginning to ache from the effort. You pause near a cluster of pines, their branches sagging under thick white caps, releasing small showers of snow whenever a stray breeze touches them. Beneath one such tree, you notice the surface is unusually clear, a small, sheltered patch of bare ground protected by the dense canopy above. You crouch and examine it closely. The cold here feels slightly less severe, the wind cut almost entirely by the thick branches overhead. This discovery sparks a memory, an old piece of knowledge passed down through countless retellings around countless fires. Evergreen trees, with their dense, unbroken canopy, were valued not just for shelter from snow itself, but for the way they trapped a thin layer of slightly warmer air beneath their boughs, a small, natural pocket of relief in an otherwise unforgiving landscape. You make a mental note of this spot, tucking the knowledge away should your group need it later. As you continue exploring the clearing's edges, your eyes catch movement in the snow-fresh tracks, distinct and sharp despite the storm's heavy snowfall the night before. You crouch beside them, examining their shape carefully. Four-toed, narrow, spaced in a pattern suggesting a deliberate, careful gait. A fox, perhaps, or something similar, moving through even in the harshest part of the night. A widely discussed insight from cold climate ecological studies surfaces in your mind. Many animals native to snow-heavy environments are remarkably adapted to moving through and even hunting in conditions that would be deadly to less prepared species, using specialized fur, fat reserves, and behavioral patterns refined over countless generations. Early humans living alongside these animals likely learned a great deal simply by observing how they moved, where they sheltered, and when they emerged to search for food. You follow the tracks a short distance, curious despite the cold, watching how they weave between trees with confident, economical movement, never wasted, always purposeful. The tracks eventually disappear into a denser thicket, and you decide not to follow further, mindful of both the effort required and the uncertainty of what might be waiting deeper in the brush. You turn back toward the clearing, where the rest of your group has begun the slow work of preparing for the day, checking the fire, assessing food stores, examining the shelter for any damage from the previous night's storm. You join them near the fire, which has been coaxed back to a steady, comforting blaze. Someone hands you a small portion of dried meat, tough and smoky, chewed slowly to make the modest meal last as long as possible. The warmth of the fire combined with even this small bit of food helps ease the persistent ache of cold that has settled into your limbs since waking. A quiet conversation begins among the group regarding today's priorities. The fresh snowfall has likely buried much of the easily accessible food sources nearby, fallen nuts, certain frozen berries, exposed roots. Foraging today will require more effort, more patience, perhaps venturing further than usual to find anything worth the trouble. A grounded perspective from studies of ancient subsistence patterns drifts into your thoughts as the group discusses their options. Evidence suggests that cold climate communities often relied heavily on stored food during the harshest stretches of winter: dried meat, preserved fat, certain hardy roots that could be kept edible for extended periods. Foraging during active snowfall or immediately after heavy storms was often considered a last resort, both for the difficulty involved and the risk of exposure. You glance toward the small store of dried meat your group carries, uncomfortably aware of how quickly it continues to shrink with each passing day. The decision, ultimately, leans toward conservation rather than risk. Today will be spent reinforcing the shelter, gathering additional firewood from beneath the sheltering pines you discovered earlier, and resting as much as possible. Tomorrow, if conditions allow, a small group might venture further in search of food. For now, survival means patience, means waiting out the worst of winter's grip rather than fighting against it directly. You spend the next several hours moving carefully between the shelter and the nearby tree line, gathering what dry branches you can find protected beneath dense canopy. Each trip leaves your hands numb despite thick wrappings, your breath ragged from the effort of moving through deep snow while carrying awkward bundles of wood. But each returning trip also adds to a growing stockpile near the fire, a small, tangible measure of security against the long night ahead. By the time pale afternoon light begins to dim into early evening shadow, the shelter feels marginally more secure than it did at dawn. The fire burns steadily, fed by a respectable stockpile of gathered wood. The group has eaten sparingly but sufficiently. The storm, for now, has passed. You sit near the fire's edge, watching flames dance against the gathering dusk, feeling the particular exhaustion that comes not from any single dramatic effort, but from an entire day spent simply enduring, moving carefully, conserving energy, making small, deliberate choices again and again in service of staying alive through one more night. Beyond the shelter's stone walls, snow begins to fall again, softer this time, gentler, almost peaceful in its rhythm. You watch it drift past the narrow gap that serves as your window to the world outside, each flake catching faint firelight for just a moment before disappearing into darkness. Night settles in slowly, the gray afternoon light fading by degrees rather than all at once, the way it tends to in deep winter, when the sun seems to lose interest in the sky long before true darkness arrives. You sit close to the fire, feeling its warmth on your face, while the rest of your body remains aware of the cold pressing in from every direction beyond the flame's reach. The shelter has settled into its evening rhythm. A few members of the group rest quietly against the hide-covered ground, eyes closed, though not quite asleep. Others tend small tasks, checking the wood supply, mending a torn strip of hide wrapping, sorting through what little food remains. The fire crackles steadily, a small, persistent heartbeat in the heart of all this cold and silence. You add a branch to the flames and watch sparks rise upward, vanishing into the darkness gathering above the shelter's stone walls. Outside, the snow has slowed to a gentle drift, fewer flakes now, falling more lazily, as though the sky itself has grown tired after the previous night's fury. A grounded historical fact rises in your thoughts as you watch the fire settle into its steady glow. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age dwelling sites frequently shows charred remains indicating that fires were maintained almost continuously through the coldest months, embers carefully preserved and protected even when groups needed to travel, carried in protective wrappings of bark or hide to avoid losing the precious flame entirely. You think of your own fire now, small but steady, and feel a quiet kinship stretching backward across countless generations who depended on exactly this same fragile, essential warmth. A faint sound interrupts your thoughts, a soft crunch of snow somewhere beyond the shelter's entrance, distinct from the wind's gentle movement through the trees. You go still immediately, listening carefully. The sound doesn't repeat right away, but a moment later it returns, closer this time, deliberate and rhythmic. Footsteps. something moving through the snow just beyond your line of sight. You glance toward the others. A few have noticed as well, their expressions shifting from rest to quiet alertness. No one speaks. In weather like this, even small sounds carry significant weight, and everyone understands instinctively that caution costs nothing while carelessness might cost everything. You rise slowly, careful not to make any sudden movement, and approach the shelter's narrow entrance. Outside, the clearing stretches before you, pale and ghostly under the dim light of an overcast moon barely visible through thick clouds. Snow blankets every surface in soft, undisturbed white, broken only by the faint impressions of your own group's earlier tracks. Then you see it movement at the clearing's edge, a dark shape emerging slowly from between two snow-laden pines. Your breath catches slightly. The shape pauses, head lifted, and you can just make out the silhouette of antlers, broad and heavy, against the pale snow behind it. An elk, massive and solitary, moving carefully through the deep drifts, clearly searching for something, shelter, perhaps, or food buried beneath the snow's thick blanket. A widely accepted insight from cold climate wildlife studies surfaces in your thoughts. Many large herbivores native to harsh winter environments develop specific foraging patterns during heavy snow seasons, often traveling significant distances in search of exposed vegetation or areas where wind has cleared snow from the ground. Early human groups living alongside these animals likely learned to recognize these patterns, understanding both the opportunity such animals represented and the caution required when encountering them at close range, especially during the especially difficult final months of winter, when even normally docile animals could become unpredictable from hunger and stress. You remain still, watching the elk move slowly across the clearing's far edge. It pauses near a cluster of low shrubs, lowering its head to investigate, then continues onward without urgency, apparently unaware of or unconcerned by your shelter's presence nearby. After several long minutes, it disappears into the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing, leaving only a faint trail of disturbed snow marking its passage. You exhale slowly, feeling tension ease from your shoulders. Behind you, a companion has joined you at the entrance, watching silently as well. "Just passing through," they murmur quietly. You nod, though privately you note the animal's direction, filing away the information should it prove useful later. Large herbivores often indicate viable foraging routes, paths through difficult terrain that smaller, more vulnerable creatures might also use. A curious detail enters your thoughts as you watch the now empty clearing settle back into stillness. Some researchers studying prehistoric hunting and survival strategies suggest that early humans paid close attention not just to animal tracks, but to animal behavior itself, how a creature moved, whether it appeared calm or agitated, whether it seemed to be searching purposefully or simply wandering. This behavioral reading, they argue, often provided more valuable survival information than tracking alone, hinting at weather changes, the presence of other predators, or the location of food sources still hidden beneath the snow. You return to the fire's warmth, settling back into your place near the flames. The brief encounter, while not dangerous, has left a lingering alertness in your chest, a reminder that the mountain remains full of life even in the depths of winter's harshest grip, life that moves carefully, cautiously, just as you do, simply trying to survive one more night, one more day, one more storm. The fire crackles softly, and you feed it another branch, watching the flames respond with a brief, eager surge before settling back into their steady rhythm. Around you, the group begins to relax again, the brief tension of the elk's appearance fading into the familiar background hum of wind and distant, settling snow. A long-discussed question among researchers of ancient cold climate survival drifts into your thoughts as the night deepens further. Scholars continue to debate how much early human groups relied on opportunistic hunting versus careful, patient foraging during the harshest winter months. Some argue that large game, when encountered, represented too significant a risk to pursue casually, especially in deep snow where injury or exhaustion could prove fatal far from shelter. Others suggest that desperate hunger sometimes forced groups into exactly these risky pursuits regardless of danger, a grim calculation between immediate risk and the slower, equally dangerous threat of starvation. You think of the elk now, already well beyond reach in the darkness, and feel grateful that tonight, at least, your group's modest stores mean such a desperate calculation isn't necessary. You glance toward the small pile of dried meat and preserved fat resting near the fire, mentally counting how many more days it might sustain you all if rationed carefully. The number feels uncomfortably small, a quiet reminder that tomorrow's foraging, however cautious, will likely become a necessity rather than a choice. For now, though, the immediate threat has passed. The fire burns steady. The shelter holds firm against the cold. You allow yourself to lean back slightly, feeling the tension of the elk's brief appearance finally dissolve into the deeper, more familiar exhaustion of a long winter day finally drawing to its close. Snow continues to drift gently beyond the shelter's stone walls, soft and quiet now, almost peaceful in its rhythm. You watch the flames a while longer, letting their warmth seep slowly into tired muscles, letting your breathing settle into something slower, calmer, more aligned with the patient, enduring rhythm of the mountain itself. Your eyes grow heavy. Sleep, when it finally arrives, comes gently this time, settling over you like the snow settling over the silent, sleeping world outside. Morning arrives with a thin, watery light that seems to struggle through the heavy clouds above, never quite reaching anything you'd call brightness. You wake stiff and cold despite the fire's lingering warmth, your body having absorbed the night's chill more deeply than you'd realized. Around you, the others stir slowly as well, each movement deliberate, conserving energy that feels increasingly precious with each passing day. Today, foraging is no longer optional. The dried meat supply has dwindled to a worryingly small portion, and everyone understands without needing to discuss it that venturing out is now a necessity rather than a choice. You gather with two companions near the shelter's entrance, wrapping extra layers of hide around your hands and feet, preparing for a longer trek than yesterday's brief exploration near the clearing. Stepping outside, the cold strikes you immediately, sharper somehow than the previous morning, as though the mountain itself has decided to test your resolve. Your breath forms thick clouds that linger in the still air before slowly dispersing. The snow has settled overnight, packing down slightly, making movement marginally easier than the deep, loose drifts of yesterday. You lead the small group along the route you scouted the day before, following the elk's faint trail where it remains visible, partially filled by drifting snow, but still discernible enough to guide your path through the densest parts of the forest. The trees here grow close together, their branches forming a partial canopy that has caught much of the recent snowfall, leaving the ground beneath slightly more navigable. A grounded historical fact surfaces in your thoughts as you walk. Researchers studying ancient cold climate survival strategies have found evidence suggesting early humans frequently used established animal trails as travel routes, recognizing that the animals themselves had already identified the most efficient and stable paths through difficult terrain. Following in the footsteps of creatures far more adapted to the landscape than humans alone, your ancestors likely saved themselves considerable effort and risk, learning patience from the wild things they shared this unforgiving world with. After nearly an hour of careful walking, the trees begin to thin, opening into a wider valley where a frozen stream winds its way between snow-covered banks, the water beneath utterly still and locked beneath a thick sheet of ice. You pause at its edge, studying the surface carefully. Sunlight, weak as it is today, glints faintly off patches where the ice has thickened into something almost glass-like, smooth and clear enough to glimpse shadows moving slowly beneath. A curious detail comes to mind as you crouch near the frozen stream's edge. Some researchers studying prehistoric subsistence patterns near rivers and streams in cold climates have proposed that early humans developed simple methods for accessing fish trapped beneath ice during the coldest months, breaking small holes through thinner sections, using sharpened bone or wood as crude spears, waiting patiently for movement beneath the surface. Whether this practice was widespread or limited to certain resourceful groups remains debated, but watching the faint shadows shift beneath the ice now, the temptation feels entirely understandable. You test the ice's thickness carefully, pressing a sturdy branch against its surface in several places, before finding a section thin enough to break through without excessive effort, yet far enough from the bank's edge to suggest the water beneath remains deep enough to hold fish even through the harshest cold. Working carefully, you and your companions break through, creating a small opening that immediately begins to refreeze at its edges, the cold working quickly to reclaim what you've disturbed. One companion kneels beside the opening, a sharpened length of bone gripped tightly in cold-numbed fingers, watching the dark water intently for any sign of movement. The process requires immense patience. Minutes pass with nothing but stillness, the cold seeping steadily into knees and hands pressed against frozen ground. You take turns watching, allowing each person brief moments to warm numbed fingers against their chest before returning to the careful vigil. A widely discussed insight from ancient subsistence archaeology drifts into your thoughts as you wait. Many researchers argue that ice fishing, however crude by later standards, represented a crucial supplementary food source during winters too harsh for reliable land-based foraging, offering protein when other sources grew scarce or required dangerous, energy-intensive pursuit. The patience required, they note, was itself a skill, one that demanded a different kind of endurance than hunting larger game, a stillness and quiet persistence that some individuals likely excelled at more than others. Finally, after what feels like an exhausting stretch of cold, motionless waiting, a shadow moves beneath the opening, quick, sudden. Your companion strikes downward with practiced precision, and after a brief, splashing struggle, pulls a modest fish free from the icy water, its scales glinting faintly in the weak daylight. It's not large, but it's real food, tangible proof that the effort and patience have yielded something worthwhile. You allow yourselves a small, quiet celebration, not loud, not boisterous, simply a shared exhale of relief and satisfaction. The fish is wrapped carefully in hide to preserve what warmth remains in its body, protecting it from the bitter cold during the walk back to camp. Encouraged, you continue the careful process at a second opening nearby, and within another hour, manage to secure 2 more modest fish, enough to provide a meaningful supplement to your group's dwindling food stores. The effort has been slow, cold, and exhausting, but undeniably successful. As you prepare to begin the walk back, a grounded perspective from environmental archaeology enters your thoughts. Some scholars suggest that frozen waterways, despite their obvious dangers, often served as crucial winter lifelines for early human communities precisely because they offered food sources that remained accessible even when terrestrial options grew scarce. The relationship between early humans and these frozen, seemingly inhospitable waters, they argue, was far more sophisticated and essential than commonly assumed. A careful negotiation between risk and necessity that shaped survival strategies across countless generations. The walk back to the shelter feels lighter despite the physical fatigue settling into your limbs, buoyed by the tangible success of your efforts. Your companions carry the wrapped fish carefully, occasionally exchanging quiet, satisfied glances. The mountain remains as cold and unforgiving as ever, but today, at least, you've managed to take something back from it, a small victory carved out through patience and careful observation. By the time you reach the shelter, the others greet your return with quiet relief and genuine excitement at the sight of fresh fish. The fire is stoked higher in preparation, and soon the modest catch is being carefully prepared, the simple smell of cooking food filling the small stone shelter with something that feels remarkably close to comfort. You settle near the fire as the food cooks, feeling exhaustion finally catch up with you now that the immediate task has been completed. Outside, the pale daylight has already begun shifting toward evening's earlier dimness, the short winter day drawing rapidly toward its close. But for now, inside this small, fire-warmed shelter, there is food, there is warmth, and there is the quiet, hard-won satisfaction of having faced the mountain's challenge and found a way through. The fish cook slowly over the fire, skewered on thin green branches that someone found beneath the snow near the shelter's edge, still flexible enough to bend without snapping. The smell rises through the small stone enclosure, simple but rich, mingling with wood smoke in a way that makes your stomach tighten with anticipation. After days of stretching dried meat into smaller and smaller portions, the prospect of fresh food feels almost luxurious. You watch the flames lick gently at the fish's skin, turning it slowly to ensure even cooking, careful not to let any portion burn or fall into the fire itself. Around you, the rest of the group waits with quiet patience, though you can see the same anticipation in their eyes that you feel in your own chest. A grounded historical fact rises in your thoughts as you tend the cooking fish. Archaeological evidence from numerous ancient sites indicates that early humans developed sophisticated understanding of cooking methods suited to available fuel and food types, recognizing that certain proteins required different approaches than others. Fish, with its delicate flesh, often benefiting from gentler, more controlled heat than the more robust roasting suited to larger game. This kind of practical knowledge, refined through countless meals across countless generations, represents an often overlooked sophistication in how early humans approached something as fundamental as feeding themselves. When the fish is finally ready, you carefully divide the modest catch among the group, ensuring everyone receives a fair portion despite the limited quantity. The meat is tender, slightly smoky, infused with the simple but satisfying flavor that comes from food earned through genuine effort. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, aware of how precious this meal is in the context of the past several difficult days. A child sitting nearby finishes their portion quickly, then watches the fire with drowsy, contented eyes, clearly satisfied in a way that goes beyond simple hunger. You smile faintly at the sight, finding comfort in this small, ordinary moment of a child's basic needs being met, even here, even now, in the depths of an unforgiving winter. As the meal concludes and the fire settles into its evening rhythm, conversation drifts toward the practicalities of the night ahead. The temperature has been dropping steadily as darkness approaches, and everyone understands that tonight will likely demand careful attention to warmth and shared body heat to ensure restful, safe sleep. A widely discussed insight from cold climate survival studies enters your thoughts as the group begins arranging sleeping positions closer together than the previous nights. Many researchers argue that communal sleeping arrangements among early human groups in harsh winter climates served a function far beyond simple comfort or social bonding. They represented a critical thermoregulatory strategy, allowing multiple bodies to share warmth more efficiently than any individual could generate alone. Some estimates suggest that close, communal sleeping could meaningfully reduce the metabolic energy required to maintain body temperature through long, cold nights, conserving precious caloric reserves that might otherwise be spent simply fighting off the cold. You find your place among the group, settling close beside two companions, feeling the immediate, subtle warmth radiating from their bodies even before any deep sleep takes hold. The fire crackles steadily nearby, its glow casting soft, flickering shadows across the stone walls, while outside, the wind moves through bare branches with its familiar, distant sigh. A curious detail drifts into your thoughts as you settle into the warmth of shared proximity. Some researchers studying prehistoric sleeping arrangements have proposed that certain groups developed specific positional patterns during communal rest. Smaller, more vulnerable individuals positioned toward the center of the group, where warmth concentrated most effectively, while larger or more experienced individuals took positions nearer the shelter's edges, both for warmth distribution and to remain more readily alert to potential threats. Whether this arrangement was conscious strategy or simply instinctive behavior remains debated, but watching the group settle naturally into something resembling exactly this pattern tonight, the theory feels entirely plausible. You notice, in fact, that the children have gravitated toward the warmest spot near the fire's glow, flanked by adults on either side, while you and several others have positioned yourselves slightly further out, closer to the shelter's stone walls. No one discussed this arrangement explicitly. It simply happened, shaped by some quiet, collective instinct toward protecting the most vulnerable members of the group. As the fire continues its steady burn, you allow your thoughts to drift toward the broader rhythm of this long winter, each day a small negotiation between scarcity and survival, each night a careful balance of warmth and rest. A long-standing discussion among anthropologists surfaces in your mind. Some scholars argue that the psychological resilience required to endure such prolonged, repetitive hardship represents one of the most underappreciated aspects of early human survival. Not the dramatic moments of danger or discovery, but the quiet, daily persistence required to simply continue, day after day, night after night, through months of unrelenting cold. You feel that persistence now settled deep in your own tired muscles, in the careful rationing of food, in the patient maintenance of fire, in the simple act of finding warmth wherever it can be found. Survival here isn't a single dramatic act. It's 1,000 small, careful choices, repeated endlessly, until eventually, hopefully, the season turns and the mountain's grip begins to loosen. The fire's warmth spreads slowly through your body as exhaustion settles in more deeply. Around you, the soft sounds of breathing gradually slow and deepen as the group drifts, one by one, toward sleep. You watch the flames a while longer, their light dancing gently against the stone, before your own eyes finally grow too heavy to resist. Outside, snow continues to fall softly, gathering quietly against the shelter's walls, indifferent to the small, fragile warmth persisting within. You close your eyes, letting the steady rhythm of fire and breath carry you gently toward rest, trusting in the solid stone around you, trusting in the shared warmth beside you, trusting in the simple, stubborn persistence that has carried your group through every difficult night so far. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes, deep and heavy, wrapping around you like the snow wrapping around the silent, sleeping mountain outside. You wake to a faint vibration beneath you, subtle at first, easy to dismiss as nothing more than a dream's lingering echo. But it comes again, a low, distant rumble that travels up through the stone and into your bones before you even fully register the sound that accompanies it. You sit up slowly, heart already quickening, every instinct sharpening into alertness. Around you, a few others stir as well, drawn from sleep by the same faint disturbance. The fire has burned low, casting only a dim, reddish glow across the shelter's interior. You strain to listen, uncertain whether what you felt was real or imagined. Then it comes again, closer this time, a deep, rolling growl that seems to emerge from the mountain itself, somewhere above and beyond your shelter's stone walls. Snow, shifting somewhere high on the slopes, the kind of sound that experienced mountain dwellers learn to recognize and fear in equal measure. A grounded historical fact rises sharply in your thoughts. Researchers studying ancient mountain communities have found evidence suggesting that early humans living in steep, snow-heavy terrain developed careful awareness of avalanche risk, often avoiding certain slopes entirely after heavy snowfall, or timing movement through dangerous areas to specific times of day, when temperature shifts made sudden snow shifts less likely. You feel a sharp pulse of concern now, uncertain whether your shelter's position, nestled against this rocky slope, sits anywhere near such danger. You rise quickly, moving toward the entrance, pushing aside the packed snow barrier to peer out into the darkness beyond. The night sky offers little light, clouds obscuring whatever moon might otherwise help illuminate the landscape. Snow has begun falling again, thicker and faster than earlier in the evening, driven by a wind that has picked up considerably since you fell asleep. The rumble comes once more, longer this time, and you catch the faint, distant sound of something shifting, not collapsing dramatically, not the catastrophic roar you might fear, but something more gradual, snow settling and resettling under its own accumulated weight somewhere on the slopes above. A companion joins you at the entrance, their expression tight with the same uncertain concern you feel. "Is it close?" they ask quietly. You shake your head slowly, though you're far from certain. Sound travels strangely in mountain terrain, distances distorted by stone and snow, and the particular acoustics of valleys and ridges. A widely discussed insight from cold climate hazard studies enters your thoughts as you stand listening carefully into the darkness. Some researchers argue that early human groups, lacking any scientific understanding of snow accumulation or slope stability in the way modern science describes it, nonetheless developed remarkably accurate intuitive models based on accumulated generational experience. Recognizing, for instance, that certain slope angles combined with certain snowfall patterns reliably produce dangerous instability, even without any formal framework for why this was true. You wonder now whether your own uneasy instinct, the sharp tightening in your chest at these distant rumbles, represents some faint echo of that same ancestral, hard-earned wisdom. You retreat back into the shelter, careful to seal the entrance against the worsening wind, and gather the group together near the fire, quickly explaining what you heard and felt. Faces tighten with concern, though no one panics. Instead, a quiet, practical discussion begins regarding whether the current shelter location remains safe, or whether the rumbling sounds suggest a need to move, despite the considerable risk of traveling through deep snow and worsening weather in the middle of the night. You glance toward the stone walls surrounding your shelter, weathered and ancient, clearly unmoved by countless previous winters. The shelter itself sits low against the slope, somewhat protected by a natural overhang of rock above. After careful consideration, the group reaches a cautious consensus. The immediate risk of moving through unfamiliar terrain in the dark, amid worsening snowfall, likely exceeds whatever risk the distant rumbling represents. The shelter, sturdy and well-positioned beneath protective stone, seems the safer choice for now. A curious detail comes to mind as the group settles back into a tense, watchful rest. Some researchers studying prehistoric mountain dwelling sites have noted that many shelters were deliberately positioned beneath substantial rock overhangs, not merely for protection from snow and wind, but specifically to provide a buffer against exactly this kind of slope instability. The overhang itself acting as a kind of natural deflector, redirecting smaller snow movements away from the shelter below. Whether early humans understood this mechanism explicitly or simply recognized through experience that such locations tended to remain safer, the practical wisdom embedded in your own shelter's positioning suddenly feels remarkably reassuring. The rumbling continues intermittently through the next hour, each occurrence slightly less alarming than the last as the group grows more accustomed to the sound, recognizing it gradually as a feature of this particular storm rather than an immediate, escalating threat. The fire burns steadily, fed carefully to maintain both warmth and a small measure of psychological comfort against the unsettling night sounds beyond the shelter's walls. You sit close to the flames, watching them dance and flicker, feeling the tension in your shoulders gradually ease as the rumbling grows more sporadic, eventually fading into long stretches of silence between occurrences. The storm outside continues, snow falling thick and steady, but the immediate, sharp fear of earlier has settled into something more manageable, a watchful awareness rather than acute alarm. A long-standing discussion among researchers of ancient risk perception drifts into your thoughts as the night gradually calms. Some scholars argue that early human survival in dangerous environments depended heavily on this exact capacity. The ability to distinguish between genuine, immediate threats and more ambiguous, uncertain dangers that required careful monitoring, rather than immediate drastic action. Reacting too strongly to every uncertain sound would have been exhausting and unsustainable. Reacting too little risked catastrophe. The careful, measured response your group has shown tonight, you realize, reflects exactly this kind of hard-won, practical wisdom. Gradually, as the rumbling fades entirely and the storm settles into a steadier, more familiar rhythm of simple heavy snowfall, the group begins to relax more fully. A few members drift back towards sleep, exhaustion eventually overcoming lingering unease. You remain awake a while longer, watching the fire, listening carefully for any return of the earlier disturbance, before finally allowing your own tired body to settle back against the hide-covered ground. The fire's warmth spreads slowly through your limbs as you finally let your guard ease. Outside, snow continues falling steadily, but the mountain, for now, seems to have settled back into its long, patient stillness. You close your eyes, letting the day's accumulated tension slowly drain away, trusting in the solid stone overhead, trusting in the shelter's careful positioning, trusting in the quiet, hard-earned wisdom that has guided your group safely through yet another uncertain night. Sleep returns slowly, but it returns, settling over you like the heavy snow settling over the silent, watchful mountain outside. Morning arrives quietly, the storm having finally exhausted itself sometime in the deepest hours of night. You wake to an unusual stillness, the absence of wind almost startling after so many hours of its constant presence. Pale light filters through the shelter's narrow entrance, and when you crawl outside, you find the world transformed once again, blanketed in a fresh, undisturbed layer of snow that seems to muffle every sound into a hushed, reverent quiet. You stand for a long moment, simply breathing in the cold, clean air, watching faint wisps of cloud drift slowly across a sky that, for the first time in days, shows hints of pale blue between the gray. The mountain feels different this morning, not gentler exactly, but settled, as though it too has spent its fury and now rests in some quieter, more contemplative state. A grounded historical fact drifts into your thoughts as you survey the calm landscape. Climate researchers studying ancient glacial periods have noted that even within the harshest winter seasons, brief stretches of relative calm were common, periods that early human communities likely recognized and used strategically. Moments to repair shelters, replenish firewood, and cautiously expand foraging efforts before the next storm system inevitably arrived. You feel a quiet determination settle into your chest. Today is one of these moments, and it shouldn't be wasted. Back inside the shelter, the group begins stirring more energetically than in recent mornings, buoyed perhaps by the storm's passing and the small success of yesterday's fishing expedition. The fire is coaxed back to a steady blaze, and a simple morning meal of preserved fat and the last small portion of fish is shared among everyone, eaten with quiet appreciation. As the meal concludes, conversation turns toward the day's tasks. The fire needs more substantial fuel reserves to weather whatever storms might follow. The shelter's stone walls, while sturdy, could benefit from additional reinforcement against wind, perhaps using packed snow in vulnerable gaps the way you discovered worked so effectively during the previous storm. And the group's hide coverings, worn and dampened from days of constant use, need careful attention and drying near the fire. You volunteer to lead a small group toward the sheltering pines you discovered days earlier, hopping to gather a more substantial supply of dry branches protected beneath their dense canopy. The walk feels easier today, the snow having settled and packed somewhat after the previous night's heavy fall, your earlier tracks still faintly visible beneath the fresh layer. A curious detail comes to mind as you walk. Some researchers studying ancient fire management practices have proposed that certain cold climate groups develop specific knowledge regarding which tree species produce the most reliable, long-burning fuel, recognizing subtle differences in how various woods caught flame, how long they burned, how much smoke they produced. This kind of specialized botanical knowledge, refined through countless seasons of trial and necessity, represents another quiet sophistication often overlooked in popular imagination of early human life. At the sheltering pines, you find exactly what you hoped, a substantial collection of dry, fallen branches protected from the worst of the snow by the dense canopy above. You and your companions work steadily, gathering and bundling the wood, occasionally pausing to test pieces for dryness and flexibility before adding them to the growing collection. While working, one of your companions notices something else beneath the pines, a thick cluster of evergreen needles fallen and gathered into a soft, fragrant pile at the base of one particularly old tree. She gathers a handful, examining them closely, before suggesting they might serve as useful bedding material, adding insulation and a pleasant scent to the shelter's increasingly worn hide coverings. A grounded perspective from ethnobotanical research enters your thoughts as you help gather additional handfuls of the fragrant needles. Some researchers studying prehistoric bedding materials have found evidence suggesting early humans frequently incorporated aromatic plant materials into their sleeping arrangements, valued both for practical insulation properties and potentially for psychological comfort during long, difficult winters. The pleasant scent released when needles are disturbed or crushed slightly, some scholars suggest, may have provided a small but meaningful sensory comfort during months otherwise dominated by cold, hardship, and scarcity. You gather a generous supply of the soft, fragrant needles, packing them carefully into a spare section of hide for transport back to the shelter. The work, while still demanding in the persistent cold, feels lighter today, buoyed by the morning's calm weather and the satisfaction of productive, purposeful effort. By midday, you and your companions return to the shelter, arms laden with gathered firewood and the fragrant bundle of pine needles. The others greet your return with quiet appreciation, immediately setting to work integrating the new materials. Wood stacked carefully near the fire, needles spread thoughtfully among the existing hide bedding to refresh and insulate the sleeping areas. The afternoon passes in a similar rhythm of practical, purposeful labor. Hide coverings are draped near the fire to dry thoroughly. Small gaps in the shelter's stone walls are identified and packed carefully with snow, learned wisdom now from the previous storm's lessons. The fire is tended continuously, fed steadily to maintain a strong, reliable bed of coals that might more easily withstand any future disruption. A long-discussed insight from cold climate anthropology drifts into your thoughts as you watch the group work together with practiced, efficient cooperation. Some researchers argue that the repetitive, seemingly mundane tasks of winter survival, fire tending, shelter maintenance, careful food rationing, served an important psychological function beyond their obvious practical necessity. The rhythm of purposeful work, they suggest, provided structure and meaning during otherwise difficult, uncertain stretches of time, helping maintain morale and a sense of agency even when broader circumstances remained largely beyond anyone's control. You feel that truth now, watching the shelter gradually transform through the day's efforts into something marginally more secure, more comfortable, more capable of withstanding whatever the mountain might still have in store. Each small task, however modest individually, contributes to a growing collective sense of resilience and quiet confidence. As afternoon light begins its slow fade toward evening, you sit near the fire, surveying the day's accomplishments with quiet satisfaction. The wood supply has grown substantially. The shelter's vulnerable gaps have been reinforced. The bedding, refreshed with fragrant pine needles, looks more inviting than it has in days. Even the hide coverings, now dry and supple again after their time near the fire, feel more capable of providing genuine warmth through the coming night. A companion settles beside you, following your gaze toward the steadily burning fire. "Better today," they say quietly, more observation than question. You nod, feeling the simple truth of it settle comfortably into your tired but satisfied body. Not easy, never easy, not in weather like this, but better, manageable, sustainable in a way that feels genuinely hopeful rather than merely endured. The fire crackles steadily as evening deepens around the shelter. Outside, the sky has cleared further, revealing faint, scattered stars beginning to emerge against the deepening darkness. A rare, welcome sight after so many consecutive nights of heavy cloud and falling snow. You watch them for a long moment, feeling something close to peace settle over your tired shoulders. Tonight, perhaps, sleep will come more easily, more deeply, untroubled by the storms and uncertainties of recent days. You settle back against the fresh, fragrant bedding, letting the fire's warmth and the day's productive exhaustion guide you gently toward rest. The shelter settles into a rare, peaceful quiet as night fully descends. You lie back against the fragrant pine needle bedding, feeling its soft give beneath your tired body, and gaze upward through the narrow gap in the stone wall where a thin slice of star-scattered sky remains visible. After so many nights of storm and uncertainty, this small glimpse of clear, calm darkness feels like an unexpected gift. The fire burns low but steady beside you, its gentle crackle blending with the soft, even breathing of your companions already drifting towards sleep. You remain awake a while longer, simply absorbing this rare moment of stillness, letting your mind wander freely for the first time in what feels like days. A grounded historical fact settles into your thoughts as you watch the stars shift almost imperceptibly across the narrow sliver of visible sky. Researchers studying ancient human cognition and early astronomical awareness suggest that consistent observation of stars and their seasonal patterns likely played a meaningful role in how early humans understood and predicted the passage of time through long winters, helping communities track the slow, gradual shift toward warmer seasons, even when daily weather remained harsh and unpredictable. You wonder, watching these same ancient patterns of light, whether your own distant ancestors found similar comfort in the same quiet, patient reassurance that seasons, however slowly, always eventually turn. A curious detail comes to mind next. Some researchers studying prehistoric symbolic behavior have proposed that certain ancient communities developed simple methods of marking time through winter, small notches carved into bone or wood, perhaps corresponding to the brightening or shortening of days, or to other observable celestial patterns. Whether this represents genuine timekeeping or simply a more general symbolic practice remains debated among scholars, but the underlying human impulse feels deeply familiar even now. A desire to track progress, to measure endurance, to mark the slow but steady passage toward better days ahead. You shift slightly, finding a more comfortable position against the soft bedding, and let your thoughts drift toward the broader arc of this difficult winter. Each day has demanded its own small victories: fire successfully maintained, food cautiously secured, shelter carefully reinforced against wind and snow alike. None of these victories feels dramatic in isolation, yet together, they form something that feels genuinely significant, a sustained, deliberate persistence against overwhelming odds. A widely discussed perspective from anthropological research on resilience drifts into your thoughts. Some scholars argue that the most remarkable aspect of early human survival in harsh climates wasn't any single dramatic skill or innovation, but rather the consistent, almost mundane discipline of daily preparation and careful, deliberate decision-making, sustained relentlessly across weeks and months of difficult conditions. Survival, by this view, emerges less from heroic moments and more from countless small, careful choices repeated faithfully, day after day, night after night. You feel that truth resonating deeply as you lie here now, body tired but settled, mind calm despite the genuine hardships of recent days. The fire's gentle warmth, the soft give of fragrant bedding beneath you, the steady, familiar breathing of companions nearby. None of this happened by accident or luck alone. It happened through careful, deliberate effort, repeated patiently across difficult days, each small task contributing to this moment of hard-won, peaceful rest. Beside you, a companion stirs slightly in their sleep, murmuring something indistinct before settling again into deeper rest. You glance toward them, feeling a quiet warmth in your chest that has little to do with the fire's literal heat. This shared experience, this collective endurance through genuine hardship, has woven something resilient between everyone sheltering here tonight. A bond forged not through comfortable circumstances, but precisely through the careful, mutual reliance demanded by genuine difficulty. A long-standing discussion among researchers of early human social bonds enters your thoughts as you watch your sleeping companions in the fire's gentle glow. Some scholars suggest that shared hardship, paradoxically, often strengthens social cohesion more effectively than comfortable ease ever could, creating deep, practical trust between individuals who have proven, through repeated difficult circumstances, their reliability and commitment to the group's collective survival. You feel the truth of this now, watching these familiar faces softened by sleep and firelight, each one having proven themselves through countless small acts of care and competence across these difficult winter days. You close your eyes briefly, letting the fire's warmth and the quiet rhythm of your companions' breathing settle deeper into your awareness. When you open them again, the stars visible through the narrow gap seem to have shifted slightly, marking the slow, steady passage of night even within this small, enclosed space. Your thoughts drift further, toward the broader landscape of winters that must have come before this one, stretching back through countless generations of people who faced exactly this same mountain, this same relentless cold, this same demanding rhythm of careful survival. Each of them, in their own way, must have lain exactly as you lie now, tired but settled, hopeful despite genuine hardship, trusting in fire and shelter, and the quiet, accumulated wisdom passed carefully from one generation to the next. A grounded perspective from cultural anthropology surfaces in your thoughts as you consider this long chain of survival stretching backward through time. Some researchers argue that this kind of accumulated, transmitted knowledge, practical wisdom about fire, shelter, food, and seasonal patterns, passed carefully from elder to younger across countless generations, represents one of humanity's most significant adaptive advantages, allowing each new generation to begin not from nothing, but from the accumulated, hard-won lessons of everyone who came before. You feel yourself as simply one small link in that vast, unbroken chain, carrying forward lessons learned long before your own lifetime, hopefully passing forward whatever small wisdom you've gained to those who will face these same mountains in winters yet to come. The fire settles further into its bed of steady coals, casting a softer, dimmer glow across the shelter's stone walls. You feel your own eyelids growing heavy at last, the day's productive exhaustion finally claiming the attention your wandering thoughts had postponed. Outside, the night remains calm, stars visible and steady against the clearing sky, the mountain resting in one of its rare, peaceful pauses between storms. You let yourself sink fully into the soft, fragrant bedding, feeling the fire's warmth and your companion's steady presence wrap around you like the most reliable kind of comfort. Sleep arrives gently this time, deep and untroubled, carrying you peacefully through the remainder of this rare, calm winter night. You wake slowly, gently, the absence of urgency in your own body telling you immediately that this has been a genuinely restful night, the first in several days that felt more like recovery than mere endurance. Pale morning light filters through the shelter's entrance, brighter than recent mornings, suggesting the clear sky from the previous night has persisted into daylight. You stretch carefully, feeling the difference a full night's deep rest has made in your tired muscles, and crawl outside to find the clearing bathed in a soft, golden light unlike anything you've seen since the storms began. The sun, weak but genuinely visible for the first time in days, sits low against the horizon, casting long blue shadows across the pristine snow. You stand for a long moment, simply absorbing this rare brightness, feeling something like hope settle gently into your chest. The cold remains sharp, the snow still deep and demanding, but this small return of visible sunlight feels significant, a quiet promise that the season, however slowly, continues its inevitable turn toward eventual warmth. A grounded historical fact rises in your thoughts as you watch sunlight glint brilliantly off the snow's surface. Climate researchers studying ancient glacial cycles note that even within the harshest extended winters, early human communities likely tracked subtle shifts in daylight duration and sun position carefully, using these gradual changes as crucial markers of seasonal progress. Hope sustained not through any single dramatic sign, but through patient observation of slow, accumulating change. As you survey the brightened landscape, movement catches your eye at the clearing's far edge, distant figures emerging slowly from the tree line, moving carefully through the deep snow. You go still immediately, watching closely. The figures move deliberately, cautiously, clearly aware of their surroundings, and as they draw closer, you can make out the shapes of several adults and at least one smaller figure trailing behind, likely a child struggling somewhat with the deep snow's demands. You return quickly to the shelter, alerting the others to the approaching group. Everyone gathers near the entrance, watching the distant figures with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Encounters between separate groups, while not common in this harsh, sparsely populated terrain, weren't unheard of either, particularly during difficult winters that pushed multiple communities to search more widely for adequate shelter and food. A widely accepted insight from anthropological research on early human social dynamics enters your thoughts as you watch the approaching strangers. Many researchers believe that separate groups occupying overlapping territories during difficult seasons often developed informal protocols for peaceful encounter. Open, visible postures, slow and deliberate movement, gestures clearly indicating non-aggressive intent. These subtle behavioral signals, refined long before complex language existed, likely played a crucial role in reducing unnecessary conflict between groups who, ultimately, shared similar struggles against the same harsh environment. You step forward from the shelter, deliberately slowing your movements, hands visible and open, signaling calm intent as the approaching group draws nearer. The strangers pause at a respectful distance, clearly assessing your group's demeanor with similar careful attention. After a long moment of mutual, wordless evaluation, one figure from the approaching group raises a hand slowly, palm open, mirroring your own gesture. Gradually, cautiously, the distance between the two groups closes. Up close, you can see clear signs of hardship in the strangers' faces: hollowed cheeks, tired eyes, hide clothing worn thin and patched repeatedly. Their leader, an older woman with deeply lined features, speaks in a dialect that differs somewhat from your own, but remains largely comprehensible, explaining through a mixture of words and simple gestures that their previous shelter had partially collapsed during recent storms, forcing them into difficult, continuous travel in search of safer ground. Your own group responds with quiet sympathy and practical hospitality, offering space near your fire and a small portion of your modest food supplies. The exhausted travelers accept gratefully, settling carefully near the warmth, visible relief, easing some of the tension from their tired postures. A curious detail comes to mind as you watch the two groups gradually settle into cautious but genuine cooperation. Some researchers studying ancient intergroup contact suggest that such encounters, however brief, often served as valuable opportunities for exchanging crucial survival information, details about nearby water sources, safe travel routes, locations of viable shelter, or warnings about specific dangers encountered along the way. This informal network of shared knowledge, passed between otherwise separate communities during chance encounters, likely played a significant role in helping multiple groups navigate the same difficult landscape more safely than any single group could manage entirely alone. As the visiting group warms themselves and shares a modest meal with your own, conversation gradually flows more easily, aided by patient gesture and shared, simplified vocabulary. You learn that their previous shelter, situated lower in the valley, had proven vulnerable to flooding from melting snow during a brief warm spell several days earlier, weakening structural supports that ultimately gave way under subsequent heavy snowfall. In exchange, your group shares knowledge of the sheltering pines you discovered, the location of the frozen stream where ice fishing proved successful, and the specific reinforcement techniques you developed for strengthening shelter walls against wind and snow. The visiting group listens with evident appreciation, clearly recognizing the practical value of this freely offered information. A grounded perspective from studies of ancient cultural exchange surfaces in your thoughts as you watch this quiet, mutual sharing unfold. Some scholars argue that these kinds of informal, practical knowledge exchanges between separate but neighboring groups represented a crucial mechanism for spreading useful survival innovation across wider geographic areas, allowing successful strategies developed by one community to gradually benefit others facing similar environmental challenges, even without any formal, sustained relationship between the groups involved. After resting and sharing food for several hours, the visiting group prepares to continue their search for a more permanent shelter, their leader expressing genuine gratitude for your hospitality and the practical knowledge shared. Before departing, she offers a small gift in return, a carefully carved piece of bone, shaped into a simple but elegant tool clearly designed for scraping hide, demonstrating skilled craftsmanship despite the group's obvious hardship. You accept the gift with genuine appreciation, recognizing the significance of such an offering from a group with so little to spare. In return, your own companions offer a portion of dried fish from yesterday's successful catch, along with directions to the sheltering pines where additional firewood might be gathered along their continued journey. The visiting group departs slowly, their figures gradually receding back into the tree line, swallowed eventually by distance and the bright, snow-reflected light. You watch until they disappear entirely, feeling a quiet, lingering warmth in your chest despite the brief nature of the encounter. A long-discussed insight from anthropological research on early human cooperation drifts into your thoughts as you return to your own shelter's fire. Some researchers argue that these brief, voluntary acts of cooperation between otherwise separate groups, repeated across countless similar encounters throughout early human history, gradually established patterns of trust and reciprocity that extended meaningfully beyond any single immediate family or close community, laying foundational groundwork for the broader social cooperation that would eventually characterize much of later human civilization. You settle back near your own fire, feeling the day's unexpected encounter settle comfortably into the broader rhythm of this difficult, demanding winter. The mountain remains as harsh and unforgiving as ever, but moments like this, brief, genuine connections forged through shared hardship and mutual generosity, offer a quiet reminder that even amid such difficulty, human connection and cooperation persist, stubborn and resilient, exactly like the small, careful fire still burning steadily before you. The afternoon stretches on with a gentleness that feels almost unfamiliar after so many days of harsh, demanding weather. You spend several hours continuing the practical work of shelter maintenance, though the mood throughout the group feels noticeably lighter, buoyed both by the morning's successful encounter and the persistent, welcome sunlight that continues filtering down through scattered clouds. While checking the perimeter of your shelter for any remaining vulnerable gaps, you notice something unexpected near a south-facing section of rock. A thin trickle of water, barely more than a few drops, working its way down the stone surface where direct sunlight has struck consistently throughout the day. You crouch and touch the moisture carefully, feeling its faint, almost imperceptible warmth compared to the surrounding frozen landscape. A grounded historical fact rises in your thoughts as you study this small, seemingly insignificant sign. Climate researchers studying ancient glacial periods note that even during the depths of extended winter seasons, brief periods of partial thaw were common, particularly on south-facing slopes that received more direct sunlight exposure, creating small, temporary signs of seasonal shift long before any broader, sustained warming arrived. Early human communities, attuned closely to their environment, likely recognized and took quiet encouragement from exactly these kinds of subtle, early indicators. You straighten and look more carefully around the clearing, noticing now several similar small signs you'd overlooked in recent days. A slight softening in the snow's texture where sunlight strikes most directly, a barely perceptible lengthening in the day's overall brightness compared to the deep, early darkness of recent weeks. None of these signs suggest the harsh winter has ended, not remotely. But together, they offer a quiet, cumulative reassurance that the season continues its slow, inevitable progression. A curious detail comes to mind as you continue your careful observation of the clearing. Some researchers studying prehistoric seasonal awareness suggest that early humans may have developed remarkably sophisticated mental calendars based not on any single dramatic marker, but on the careful, cumulative tracking of dozens of small environmental signs, subtle shifts in animal behavior, gradual changes in daylight, minor variations in snow texture and melting patterns. This kind of distributed, multi-source seasonal awareness, they argue, likely proved more reliable than reliance on any single indicator alone, since individual signs could be misleading or inconsistent from year to year. You return to the shelter, sharing your small observations with the rest of the group. A few nod thoughtfully, mentioning similar small signs they'd noticed themselves, a slightly different quality to the morning birdsong heard faintly in recent days, a subtle shift in how quickly fresh snow seemed to compact compared to earlier in the season. Together, these small observations accumulate into something like cautious, collective optimism. The afternoon continues with steady, purposeful work. You help reinforce a section of the shelter's roof using additional bark and packed snow, learned techniques refined now through repeated practical experience across these difficult weeks. Nearby, others continue drying and mending hide coverings, taking advantage of the persistent sunlight to thoroughly air out materials that have spent too many recent days damp and cold. A widely discussed perspective from cold climate survival research enters your thoughts as you work. Some scholars argue that periods of relative calm and moderate weather, like today's, served a crucial restorative function for early human communities, allowing not just physical recovery from accumulated cold and exhaustion, but also providing necessary time for the kind of careful, deliberate maintenance work that harsh, continuous storms made impossible. Without these intermittent calm periods, they suggest, the cumulative wear on both shelter and people would likely prove unsustainable across an entire winter season. As afternoon gradually shifts toward evening, the temperature begins dropping again, the brief warmth of direct sunlight fading as the sun continues its low arc toward the horizon. You feel the familiar chill returning, though tempered now by the day's productive work and the lingering, quiet optimism inspired by today's small signs of seasonal progress. The group gathers near the fire as evening settles in fully, sharing a modest meal of preserved fat and the remaining small portion of dried meat, supplemented by a handful of frozen berries someone discovered earlier in the day, clinging stubbornly to a low bush near the clearing's edge. The berries, while sharp and intensely tart from the cold, provide a welcome change in flavor after days of more monotonous rationing. A grounded perspective from ancient nutritional studies surfaces in your thoughts as you eat. Researchers studying prehistoric diets in cold climates note that even small quantities of varied food sources, berries, certain frozen roots, occasional fresh fish, likely played an important nutritional role beyond simple caloric content, providing essential vitamins and minerals that more monotonous diets of preserved meat and fat alone might not fully supply. Early human communities, even without any formal understanding of nutrition as a concept, likely developed instinctive preferences and foraging patterns that served this broader nutritional need, drawn perhaps simply by taste and the body's own subtle cravings. As the meal concludes, the group settles into a comfortable, familiar evening rhythm. The fire burns steadily, fed by the substantial wood supply gathered over recent days. Conversation flows easily, lighter than in recent evenings, touching on small, ordinary topics, observations about the day's encounter with the traveling group, speculation about whether tomorrow might bring continued clear weather, quiet jokes about who struggled most with the deep snow during today's various tasks. You find yourself smiling at this easy, comfortable atmosphere, a welcome contrast to the tense alertness that has characterized so many recent evenings. The mountain's challenges remain real and ongoing, but tonight at least, the immediate pressure feels manageable, even almost pleasant in its familiar, settled rhythm. A long-standing discussion among anthropologists regarding early human emotional resilience drifts into your thoughts as you watch your companions share quiet laughter near the fire's warm glow. Some scholars argue that the capacity to find genuine moments of lightness and connection, even amid sustained hardship, represents a crucial psychological adaptation, allowing communities to maintain morale and social cohesion across difficult extended periods rather than succumbing entirely to the cumulative weight of constant stress and deprivation. You feel that wisdom now, watching the easy comfort shared around tonight's fire, recognizing it as its own kind of quiet survival skill, as essential in its way as fire tending or careful food rationing. As the evening deepens further, the group begins settling towards sleep, the familiar routine of arranging bedding, and ensuring the fire's steady maintenance now performed with practiced, comfortable efficiency. You find your own place among the warm, fragrant pine needle bedding, feeling genuinely rested in a way that feels different from the exhausted collapse of recent nights. Outside, the sky has cleared further still, stars emerging in greater numbers against the deepening darkness, a beautiful, quiet canopy stretching endlessly above the sleeping mountain. You watch them for a long moment through the shelter's narrow opening before finally letting your own tired eyes close fully. The fire crackles softly nearby, a steady, reassuring presence. Around you, your companions breathe slowly and evenly, settled into peaceful rest. The mountain remains vast and ultimately indifferent beyond your shelter's walls, but within this small, warm space, something resilient and genuinely hopeful continues quietly persisting, night after night, day after day, carrying you steadily forward through this long, difficult winter toward whatever warmer days eventually wait ahead. You drift into sleep easily tonight, and when you stir again sometime later, it isn't from fear or sudden noise, but from the simple, gradual shift of your own body settling into a different, deeper layer of rest. The fire has burned down to a low, steady bed of embers, glowing faintly orange against the dim stone walls. Outside, snow has begun falling again, but softly this time, almost gently, each flake drifting downward without urgency. You lie still for a long while, simply listening. The sound beyond the shelter's narrow entrance has changed yet again, shifting from the sharp, driven hiss of earlier storms into something quieter, more contemplative, a slow, whispering descent of snow settling onto snow, layer upon layer, patient and unhurried. A grounded historical fact drifts gently into your thoughts as you listen. Researchers studying ancient sleep patterns in cold climates suggest that early humans likely experienced what scholars now call segmented sleep, multiple shorter periods of rest separated by brief intervals of quiet wakefulness, rather than one long, uninterrupted stretch. This pattern, some argue, may have served a protective function, allowing periodic awareness of surroundings even during deep winter nights, while still permitting genuine, restorative rest across the night's full duration. You feel that rhythm now, this quiet, peaceful wakefulness settling comfortably between deeper stretches of sleep, neither alarming nor unwelcome, simply another familiar layer of how winter nights unfold. You shift slightly, finding a more comfortable position against the soft, fragrant bedding, and let your eyes drift toward the narrow gap where faint, snow-filtered moonlight offers the barest suggestion of illumination. The shelter around you holds its accumulated warmth well tonight, the reinforced walls and packed snow barriers doing their careful work, keeping the worst of the outside cold at a comfortable distance. You can feel the faint warmth of your companions nearby, their steady, even breathing blending with the fire's soft crackle and the gentle, whispering descent of snow beyond the walls. A curious detail drifts into your thoughts as you rest in this quiet, comfortable stillness. Some researchers studying ancient acoustic environments propose that the specific, muffled quality of sound during snowfall, softer, more enclosed, almost cushioned compared to clear weather nights, may have held a subtle calming effect on early human nervous systems, the gentle, consistent hush helping ease minds into deeper relaxation, even amid otherwise harsh environmental conditions. You feel something like that effect now, the soft, snow-muffled quiet outside settling over your own thoughts like a slow, gentle weight, easing each thought into something looser, less defined, more willing to drift. You let your breathing slow further, matching itself unconsciously to the steady, unhurried rhythm of falling snow. Each breath in carries the cool, clean scent of the shelter's stone walls mixed faintly with the fragrant pine bedding beneath you. Each breath out releases slowly, carrying with it some small portion of the day's accumulated tension and effort. Your thoughts wander loosely now, drifting without particular direction, the way they tend to in this quiet space between full wakefulness and deeper sleep. You think briefly of the visiting group from yesterday, wondering where they've found shelter tonight, hopping quietly that their journey has led them somewhere safe and warm. You think of the small, carved bone tool they gifted you, resting now carefully wrapped near your sleeping space, a small, tangible reminder of unexpected kindness shared between strangers facing the same difficult season. A widely discussed insight from ancient cognitive studies enters your thoughts gently, without urgency. Some researchers suggest that this kind of loose, undirected mental wandering, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, thoughts drifting freely without focused intention, may have served an important psychological function for early humans, allowing the mind to process and integrate recent experiences, consolidate useful memories, and ease gradually toward the kind of deep, restorative sleep necessary for sustained physical and mental resilience across difficult seasons. You feel your own thoughts following exactly this pattern now, each memory and observation drifting past gently, neither demanding urgent attention nor disappearing entirely, simply existing for a moment in soft, unhurried consideration before fading naturally into the next thought, and the next, and the next. The fire shifts slightly, a log settling deeper into the bed of coals, sending a brief, soft shower of sparks upward before settling back into its steady, glowing rhythm. You watch this small movement through half-closed eyes, finding something deeply soothing in its familiar, predictable pattern, fire behaving exactly as fire always behaves, reliable and constant even amid the broader uncertainty of this demanding winter. Outside, the snow continues its slow, patient descent, each flake settling silently onto the accumulated layers below, building gradually, gently, without any of the dramatic urgency of recent storms. The mountain rests in this quiet, contemplative state, vast and ancient, indifferent to the small, fragile warmth persisting within your shelter's walls, yet somehow, in this particular moment, feeling less threatening and more simply present, a vast, patient backdrop against which your own small, careful survival continues quietly unfolding. A grounded perspective from environmental psychology drifts into your thoughts as you continue settling deeper into restful stillness. Some researchers argue that prolonged exposure to natural, rhythmic environmental sounds, falling snow, crackling fire, steady wind, can induce a kind of meditative calm in human nervous systems, even amid otherwise stressful or demanding circumstances. The consistent, predictable rhythm offering a kind of psychological anchor that helps regulate stress responses and ease the transition toward deeper rest. You feel that anchor now, the combined rhythm of fire and falling snow settling around you like the most familiar, reassuring kind of comfort. Your muscles, tired from the day's accumulated effort, continue releasing their tension by slow degrees, each breath carrying you further into genuine, deep relaxation. Your thoughts grow quieter, slower, less inclined toward specific memory or observation, settling instead into something more diffuse and peaceful, simple awareness of warmth, of breath, of the gentle, patient sound of snow continuing its slow descent beyond the shelter's protective walls. The fire's glow softens further behind your closing eyes, the world gradually narrowing to this small, warm, peaceful space where rest, finally, fully, becomes possible. You let yourself sink completely into the soft, fragrant bedding beneath you, feeling the day's effort and the night's quiet stillness combine into something approaching genuine peace. The mountain continues its vast, ancient patience beyond your shelter's walls, and within that patience, you find your own small, quiet rest, deep and untroubled, carrying you gently through the remainder of this long winter night. You wake slowly, gently, the kind of waking that arrives in soft layers rather than all at once. The shelter holds a quiet stillness this morning, the fire reduced to a faint, glowing bed of coals, the air carrying that particular cool freshness that follows a night of steady, gentle snowfall rather than violent storm. You remain still for a long while, simply existing within this comfortable quiet, neither fully ready to move nor particularly inclined to fight the lingering pull of rest. Around you, your companions remain settled in their own peaceful stillness, breathing slow and even, the entire shelter wrapped in a kind of unhurried calm that feels different from the watchful tension of recent weeks. A grounded historical fact settles gently into your thoughts as you lie here, unhurried. Researchers studying ancient winter survival patterns suggest that early human communities likely developed a kind of adaptive rhythm across an extended cold season, periods of intense, urgent effort during storms and immediate crises, balanced by deliberate stretches of restful conservation during calmer weather, allowing bodies and minds to recover fully before the next demanding stretch inevitably arrived. This morning, wrapped in such gentle, unhurried quiet, feels like exactly this kind of necessary, restorative pause. Eventually, you rise, careful not to disturb the others still resting peacefully nearby. You crawl toward the shelter's entrance and step outside into a world rendered soft and gentle by the previous night's steady, quiet snowfall. Fresh powder coats every surface in a smooth, unbroken layer, catching the pale morning light in countless small, glittering points across its surface. You stand for a long moment, simply breathing in the cold, clean air, watching faint wisps of your own breath drift upward and dissolve. The clearing feels peaceful this morning, the kind of deep, settled quiet that follows gentle snow rather than the tense aftermath of violent storm. A curious detail drifts into your thoughts as you survey this calm, snow-covered landscape. Some researchers studying ancient seasonal awareness propose that early humans likely developed a nuanced emotional vocabulary of sorts for different types of winter weather, distinguishing between the anxious alertness demanded by violent storms and the calmer, more contemplative mood inspired by gentle, steady snowfall like last night's. This emotional attunement to environmental nuance, they suggest, may have helped communities modulate their own behavior and energy appropriately, conserving urgent vigilance for moments that genuinely required it. You walk slowly across the fresh snow, your footsteps leaving clean, deep impressions behind you, the only marks disturbing the otherwise pristine white surface. Somewhere in the distance, a faint birdsong drifts through the still air, the first such sound you've noticed in several days, small and tentative but undeniably present. You pause, listening carefully, feeling something like quiet hope settle into your chest at this small, simple sign of persistent life, continuing even through the depths of this difficult winter. The mountain remains harsh, remains demanding, but life persists within it regardless, small and resilient, finding its way forward despite every obstacle. A widely discussed insight from ecological research on winter resilience enters your thoughts as you continue your slow, peaceful walk. Some scholars argue that observing this kind of persistent wildlife activity, birds foraging despite cold, small animals leaving fresh tracks across snow, evidence of life continuing its essential rhythms even amid harsh conditions, likely provided early human communities with a kind of psychological reassurance, a visible, tangible reminder that survival through difficult seasons remained genuinely possible, demonstrated continuously by the natural world around them. You feel that reassurance now, watching faint tracks crossing the clearing's edge, evidence of some small creature's nighttime foraging, evidence that even in the depths of winter's grip, life continues finding ways to persist, to adapt, to carry forward through difficulty toward whatever warmer days eventually wait ahead. Returning to the shelter, you find the others beginning to stir as well, the morning's gentle quiet gradually giving way to the familiar, comfortable rhythm of shared waking. The fire is coaxed back to a steady blaze, and a simple morning meal is shared among the group, modest but sufficient, eaten with the unhurried calm that seems to have settled over everyone this particular morning. A grounded perspective from anthropological studies on seasonal rhythm drifts into your thoughts as you eat slowly, savoring this calm, unhurried meal. Some researchers suggest that early human communities likely developed an intuitive understanding of packing themselves across an entire winter season, recognizing that not every day demanded maximum urgent effort, that genuine survival required balancing periods of intense exertion with equally necessary periods of rest and recovery. Pushing too hard, too consistently, without allowing genuine restorative pauses, they argue, would likely have proven unsustainable across months of demanding cold. You feel the wisdom of this rhythm now, appreciating this particular morning's gentle, unhurried quality precisely because it follows so many days of more urgent, demanding effort. The mountain will likely demand intense effort again soon enough. Another storm, another necessary foraging expedition, another careful negotiation between scarcity and survival. But today, at least, offers a genuine pause, a moment of recovery before whatever comes next. The morning continues at this same unhurried pace. Hide coverings are checked and adjusted as needed, though nothing urgent requires immediate attention. The fire is maintained steadily, fed at a comfortable, relaxed pace rather than the urgent tending demanded during storms. A few members of the group take advantage of the calm, whether to venture briefly beyond the immediate clearing, gathering small additional supplies of firewood at an easy, unhurried pace, rather than the more frantic gathering of more demanding days. You spend part of the morning simply sitting near the fire, mending a small tear in your own hide coat, the repetitive, focused work of careful stitching offering its own kind of quiet, meditative calm. A long-standing discussion among researchers of ancient craft and material culture enters your thoughts as you work. Some scholars argue that these kinds of careful, repetitive maintenance tasks, mending clothing, repairing tools, tending fire, likely served important psychological functions beyond their obvious practical necessity, offering early humans a sense of productive purpose and quiet, focused calm even during otherwise difficult or uncertain seasons. You feel that calm now, settled into the simple, repetitive rhythm of careful stitching, each small motion requiring just enough focused attention to ease your mind away from broader worry, settling instead into this small, manageable, immediate task. By midday, the sky has remained mostly clear, pale winter sunlight offering gentle warmth that, while far from comfortable by any ordinary standard, feels genuinely pleasant after so many days of harsher, more demanding weather. The group continues its unhurried rhythm of light maintenance and quiet rest, conversation flowing easily and comfortably throughout the shelter. As afternoon gradually shifts toward evening, you find yourself feeling genuinely rested in a way that feels different from the exhausted relief of recent days. Not merely the absence of acute crisis, but something closer to genuine, accumulated recovery. Body and mind both gradually restoring themselves after the sustained demands of recent weeks. The fire burns steadily as evening settles in, and the group shares another comfortable, unhurried meal, conversation drifting easily across small, ordinary topics. You feel a quiet contentment settle into your tired, but genuinely rested body, appreciating this calm, gentle day precisely because of how clearly it contrasts with the more demanding stretches that came before it. As night fully descends, the group begins settling toward sleep with the same unhurried, comfortable rhythm that has characterized this entire peaceful day. You find your place among the soft, fragrant bedding, feeling genuinely ready for deep, restorative rest rather than merely collapsing from accumulated exhaustion. Outside, snow continues falling softly, gentle and unhurried, matching perfectly the calm, settled rhythm of this particular day. You close your eyes, letting the fire's steady warmth and your own genuine, accumulated rest guide you peacefully toward sleep, trusting fully in this moment of calm before whatever the mountain might demand next. The night settles deeply around the shelter, and you drift into a rest that feels different from the watchful, half-alert sleep of recent storm-filled nights. Tonight, your body has truly let go, sinking into the soft, fragrant bedding with a heaviness that comes only after genuine, accumulated recovery. The fire burns low and steady beside you, its faint orange glow the only light in the otherwise dark, peaceful shelter. When you stir again sometime later, it is gentle, unhurried, your awareness rising slowly from deep sleep rather than snapping suddenly awake. You lie still for a long while, simply existing within the quiet dark, listening to the soft, steady rhythm of your companions breathing nearby, the faint, occasional crackle of settling embers, the distant, almost imperceptible hush of snow continuing its patient descent beyond the shelter's stone walls. A grounded historical fact drifts slowly into your thoughts, unhurried, matching the loose, peaceful quality of this particular moment. Researchers studying ancient human sleep architecture suggest that the specific, layered quality of rest experienced during long winter nights, periods of lighter wakefulness interspersed with deeper, more restorative sleep, may have allowed early humans to maintain a kind of baseline environmental awareness even while still achieving genuinely sufficient rest across the night's full duration. You feel that layered quality now, this gentle, peaceful wakefulness settling comfortably between deeper stretches of sleep, neither demanding nor unwelcome. You shift slightly, finding renewed comfort in the bedding's soft, fragrant give beneath you, and let your eyes drift closed again, though full sleep doesn't return immediately. Instead, your mind settles into that familiar, peaceful drift, thoughts moving slowly, loosely, without particular direction or urgency. You think vaguely of the season's slow turn, of the small signs you've noticed gradually accumulating, slightly longer daylight, the faint return of birdsong, the brief, gentle thaw along sun-warmed stone. None of these signs suggest the winter has ended, not remotely. But together, they continue offering their quiet, cumulative reassurance that the season continues its patient, inevitable progression toward eventual warmth. A curious detail drifts gently into your thoughts as you rest in this peaceful half-awareness. Some researchers studying ancient psychological adaptation propose that early humans likely developed what scholars sometimes describe as seasonal patience, a particular kind of extended low-grade hopefulness, sustained not through any single decisive moment, but through the patient, repeated observation of countless small, gradual signs accumulating slowly across weeks and months. This sustained, distributed hope, they argue, may have proven psychologically essential for enduring winters that demanded weeks or months of continuous difficulty, without any single, clear endpoint to anchor toward. You feel that patient hope settling comfortably into your own tired, peaceful awareness now, neither urgent nor anxious, simply present, quiet and steady, much like the fire's gentle glow beside you. Your thoughts drift further loosely toward the shelter itself, the careful stone walls, reinforced gradually through weeks of patient effort, the fragrant pine bedding gathered through careful foraging, the steady fire maintained continuously through storm and calm alike. None of this happened easily. None of this happened by simple luck. It happened through accumulated, careful effort, repeated faithfully across difficult days, until gradually, this small space became something genuinely capable of sustaining safe, restorative rest even amid an unforgiving mountain winter. A widely discussed perspective from cold climate anthropology drifts gently into your thoughts. Some researchers argue that the cumulative, incremental nature of effective winter shelter building, small improvements added gradually over time, rather than any single, complete solution achieved all at once, reflects a broader pattern characteristic of early human adaptation more generally. Patient, iterative problem solving, learning continuously from each day's specific challenges, refining solutions gradually through sustained, careful attention rather than sudden, dramatic insight. You feel the truth of that pattern now, lying within a shelter shaped gradually through exactly this kind of patient, iterative care. Each storm taught something. Each calm day allowed time to apply that lesson. Each small adjustment, however modest individually, contributed cumulatively to this present moment of genuine, restorative peace. The fire shifts softly nearby, a faint, settling sound that barely disturbs the deep, peaceful quiet surrounding you. You let your breathing slow further, matching itself unconsciously to the unhurried rhythm of this entire peaceful night. Each breath in carries the cool, faintly resinous scent of pine bedding mixed with the deeper, earthier smell of old stone walls. Each breath out releases slowly, carrying with it whatever small remaining tension might still linger from the day's gentler, easier demands. A grounded perspective from environmental psychology settles into your thoughts as you continue drifting peacefully between wakefulness and deeper sleep. Some researchers suggest that consistent exposure to predictable, rhythmic environmental patterns, fire's steady crackle, snow's soft, patient descent, the reliable warmth of nearby companions, can gradually train the nervous system toward deeper baseline calm even within objectively difficult or demanding circumstances. The brain learning, through repeated exposure, that these particular rhythms reliably accompany safety rather than danger. You feel that learned calm now, your own nervous system settling comfortably into the familiar, reassuring rhythm of this particular shelter, this particular fire, these particular companions whose steady, even breathing has become its own kind of comforting, predictable music across these many difficult weeks. Your thoughts grow quieter still, slower, less inclined toward specific memory or anticipation, settling instead into something increasingly diffuse and peaceful, simple awareness of warmth, of breath, of the soft, patient sound of snow continuing its gentle descent beyond the shelter's protective walls. The fire's faint glow softens further behind your closing eyes, the world gradually narrowing to this small, warm, deeply peaceful space. You let yourself sink completely into the soft bedding beneath you once more, feeling the accumulated peace of this entire gentle day and night combine into something approaching deep, genuine contentment. The mountain continues its vast, ancient patience beyond your shelter's walls, indifferent yet somehow no longer threatening in this particular peaceful moment, simply present, vast and quiet, holding within its patient stillness your own small, careful survival, continuing steadily forward, night after night, toward whatever warmer days eventually wait ahead. Sleep settles over you fully now, deep and untroubled, carrying you gently through the remainder of this long, peaceful winter night. Time moves differently now, the way it always seems to in the deepest, quietest hours of a long winter night. You drift in and out of soft, peaceful awareness, never quite fully waking, never quite fully lost to sleep either, simply resting in that gentle, comfortable space between the two, where thoughts move slowly and the body feels heavy and warm and entirely at ease. The fire has settled into its final, quietest stage, a deep bed of softly glowing coals that need no further tending tonight, content simply to release their last, lingering warmth slowly into the still air of the shelter. You feel that warmth reaching you faintly even now, a gentle, steady presence rather than anything urgent or demanding. Outside, the snow continues falling, softer now than at any point earlier in the night, each flake drifting down so gently, it seems almost reluctant to disturb the deep, settled quiet of the sleeping mountain. You can just barely hear it, a faint, whispering hush beyond the shelter's stone walls, patient and endless, the same gentle sound that has accompanied you through so much of this long winter already. A grounded historical fact drifts slowly through your thoughts, unhurried, gentle, matching perfectly the soft, peaceful quality of this particular moment. Researchers studying ancient human resilience suggest that the capacity to find genuine rest even amid prolonged hardship represents one of the most quietly remarkable aspects of early human survival, not loud, not dramatic, but essential nonetheless, allowing bodies and minds to recover fully enough to face, again and again, whatever the next day's challenges might bring. You feel that quiet resilience settled deep within your own tired, peaceful body now, recovery happening slowly, gently, exactly as it should, without any need for urgency or force. Your thoughts continue drifting, looser now, less defined, the way thoughts tend to become in this deepest, most peaceful stretch of rest. You think vaguely, gently of the shelter around you, stone walls weathered by countless winters before this one, now holding safely within them your own small, careful survival. You think of the fire, faithful and steady, asking only patient attention in return for its essential warmth. You think of your companions, sleeping peacefully nearby, each one having proven, through weeks of shared hardship, their quiet strength and reliability. None of these thoughts arrive with any urgency. They simply drift past, soft and unhurried, the way clouds drift slowly across a winter sky, present for a moment, then gently giving way to whatever comes next. A curious detail drifts gently into your awareness, soft and unhurried. Some researchers studying ancient human cognition propose that this particular quality of loose, peaceful, undirected thought, neither focused nor anxious, simply present and unhurried, may represent one of the most basic and essential components of genuine rest, allowing the mind to settle fully, to release the day's accumulated effort, to prepare gently for whatever renewed energy tomorrow might require. You feel your own mind settling exactly into this peaceful looseness now, thoughts growing slower, gentler, less inclined to hold onto any particular memory or worry, simply existing softly in this warm, dark, peaceful space. The mountain remains vast beyond your shelter's walls, ancient and patient, indifferent in its enormous scale to the small, fragile warmth persisting carefully within your fire's steady glow. And yet, in this particular quiet moment, that vastness no longer feels threatening. It simply feels present, a great, silent backdrop against which your own small, careful survival continues, night after night, patient and persistent, much like the snow itself, falling gently, endlessly, asking nothing more than to be allowed to settle slowly into its own quiet rhythm. You feel your breathing slow further still, each inhale soft and unhurried, each exhale releasing gently, carrying with it the last small remnants of the day's effort, the week's accumulated challenges, the winter's ongoing demands. None of it disappears entirely. The mountain remains, the cold remains, tomorrow will likely bring its own renewed challenges. But for this particular moment, all of it rests quietly at a comfortable distance, soft and manageable, nothing requiring immediate attention. A grounded perspective from sleep science drifts softly through your thoughts, the kind of thought that arrives gently and dissolves just as easily. Researchers studying the physiology of deep rest note that the body's natural transition into its most restorative sleep states depends heavily on exactly this kind of gradual release. Muscles loosening by slow degrees, breathing settling into longer, steadier patterns, the mind gradually relinquishing its hold on active, directed thought in favor of looser, more peaceful drifting. You feel your own body moving through exactly this gentle transition now, each small release bringing you closer to genuine, deep, restorative rest. The fire's last faint glow continues its quiet work nearby, asking nothing further of you tonight. The fragrant pine bedding holds you gently, soft and warm beneath your tired body. Your companions breathe slowly and evenly around you, their steady presence its own quiet reassurance, woven now deeply into the familiar rhythm of these many shared nights. Outside, the snow continues its endless, gentle descent, soft and patient, layer settling quietly upon layer, the mountain resting in its vast, ancient stillness, holding within that stillness your own small, warm shelter, your own small, persistent fire, your own small, careful survival, continuing steadily forward through this long winter night. You let go fully now, releasing whatever small remaining tension might still linger in your tired shoulders, your tired hands, your tired, peaceful mind. There is nothing more to do tonight. The fire holds. The shelter holds. The night holds, vast and quiet and patient, asking only that you rest now, fully, deeply, trusting in everything that has been carefully built and maintained across these many difficult days. Sleep settles over you completely, deep and peaceful, carrying you gently through the remainder of this quiet winter night, and into whatever rest awaits beyond it. Now in this deepest, quietest stretch of night, let your body settle fully into stillness. There is nothing left to watch for, nothing left to tend, nothing left to carry. The fire holds its own gentle warmth without needing anything further from you. The shelter holds firm against the cold beyond its walls. The snow continues its slow, patient descent, and you have nowhere to be but exactly here, resting, warm, safe. Feel the weight of your own body sinking gently into the soft bedding beneath you, heavier with each slow breath, more at ease with each passing moment. Your shoulders, carried tight for so many days against the cold and the effort of survival, finally let go completely now, sinking loose and heavy into rest. Your hands, worked raw by gathering wood and tending fire and shaping shelter from stone and snow, finally uncurl, resting open and still. Picture the fire beside you, reduced now to its softest, faintest glow, deep orange coals breathing slowly in the dark, asking for nothing, simply present, simply warm. Picture the stone walls around you, ancient and solid, holding their quiet watch through this night exactly as they have held watch through countless nights before, indifferent to time, patient beyond memory, simply there, simply steady. Picture the snow falling gently beyond those walls, soft and endless, each flake settling without sound onto the gathering white below, layer upon layer, slow and unhurried, the whole mountain wrapped now in this deep, peaceful quiet that asks nothing of you except rest. Let your breathing slow further still, in slow and easy, out long and unhurried, each breath a small release, each release carrying you further from effort and further into stillness. There is no storm tonight, no urgent task waiting, no decision left to make. Only this, warmth, breath, the soft weight of rest settling over you like the snow settling gently over the sleeping mountain outside. Let your thoughts grow quieter now, slower, less defined, drifting loosely the way snow drifts in the last moments before it finally, gently, comes to rest. There is nothing you need to hold on to. Let each thought simply pass, soft and unhurried, dissolving easily into the next, and the next until even thought itself begins to soften into something closer to silence. Feel the steady presence of those resting near you, their slow, even breathing its own quiet reassurance, woven now into the familiar rhythm of so many shared nights survived together. You are not alone in this stillness. The fire is not alone in its quiet glow. The mountain itself, vast and ancient, holds within its patient silence countless small fires, countless small shelters, countless small moments of rest exactly like this one, stretching back through time beyond memory and forward too into nights not yet arrived. Let that vastness hold you gently now, rather than weigh on you. Let the mountain's enormous, ancient patience become, for tonight, simply a soft, dark blanket settling over your own small, careful rest. You have done enough today. You have done enough this week, this season, this long, demanding winter. Tonight asks nothing more of you than this, to rest fully, deeply, trusting in everything already built, already maintained, already survived. The fire continues its quiet breathing nearby. The snow continues its gentle, patient fall. Your own breath continues slowing, deepening, easing you further and further from waking thought and closer to genuine, restorative sleep. Let your eyes rest closed now, heavy and still. Let your whole body soften into the warmth gathered around you. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to watch for, nothing left but this slow, peaceful drift into deep, quiet rest, carried gently by the steady fire, the soft fall of snow, and the patient, ancient stillness of the mountain holding watch through this long winter night. Sleep now, rest fully. The mountain will still be here when morning comes, patient and unchanged, and so, too, will the fire and the shelter and all the quiet strength that carried you safely through this night. But none of that needs your attention any longer. Not now. Not until morning. For now there is only this. Warmth, breath, stillness, and the soft, endless hush of snow falling gently, gently, gently into the deep and peaceful dark. Rest now, let it all go, sleep.